Back to the book. I turned to God several times. Often I felt my prayers went unanswered. But I somehow lived through this madness, and I think that someone must have been listening. But faith in God could not prevent the beatings on the railway, which were totally routine. The threat of a rifle butt across your head or bamboo cane across your body forever loomed large. For no reason at all, wire whips would lash into our backs and draw blood. Some guards would creep up on you and strike the open tropical ulcers on your legs with a bamboo stick, causing intense agony. Often they delivered these beatings with such brutality and swiftness that you did not see them coming or even know that they were what they were for. Sometimes you just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Korean guards took a certain pleasure in the beatings. They had express permission to kill prisoners without any reference to higher authority, but most of them would be satisfied to stop at the sight of a blood trickling. The beatings, no matter how frequent, never got easier to take. In fact, they got tougher. Each time I took a beating, it chipped away, not just at my bones and waning muscles, but at my will to endure them. The dilemma was whether to swallow your pride by going down at the first blow, or to retain some of your dignity by taking several blows and standing up to them. If you refused to show that their blows were hurting you, they would fly into rages, and the beating could be severe, even fatal. From an early period, the Japanese camp commandant, whom I called the Black Prince, became ever more inventive with his punishments. I could not imagine a more sadistic and evil person on the planet. The more heinous the so-called crime, the sicker the sentence. Under his instructions, the guards had free rein. If they felt you deserved something more than a beating, it meant taking you aside and making you pick up a large boulder. For the rest of the day, you had to hold the rock over your head in the blazing heat. Within minutes, your already weak and malnourished arms would start to twitch and fail you. Before long, you would have to drop the rock, usually the size of a rugby ball or football, mindful so that you did so without letting it fall on your own skull. When you let go, the guards would pounce. Fists, rifle butts, and boots flailing into your body until you picked up the rock again. It would go on all day. And if the Japanese officer did not think you had learned your lesson sufficiently, the punishment would be repeated back at camp. The Black Prince was a true bastard. Others called him the Can-You Kid, but I thought my name suited Lieutenant Usuki really well. He was darker than the other Japanese soldiers and strutted around like royalty, his beefy gut protruding from beneath a shabby uniform. He despised us totally. We were scum to him. His absolute power over us and capacity for pitiless brutality made him so terrifying to me. Long before our decision to incarcerate crazy men, the Japanese had built their own cages. The black holes, as they were known, were a higher form of punishment. Those unfortunate enough to be locked inside the semi-subterranean cages, proportioned so you could not stand, lie down, or even kneel fully, would be kept in for a month typically. Corrugated iron and metal covered the bamboo to intensify the heat and deprive victims of air and any cooling breeze. Few who went in came out alive. Yeah. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. The Black Prince's right-hand man was Sergeant Seichi, known to us Brits simply as Dr. Death. Short and squat, he took the roll calls and carried out all of the camp commandant's orders. Presumably, he was more educated than the other Japanese or Koreans, but he was evil to the marrow. Ruthless in the extreme, he loved tormenting us. He especially reveled in a sickening brand of water torture. He had guards pin down his hapless victim before pouring gallons of water down the prisoner's throat using a bucket and a hose. The man's stomach would swell up from huge volumes of water. He would then jump up and down gleefully on the prisoner's stomach. Sometimes the guards tied barbed wire around the poor soul's stomach. Few survived. When a prisoner was caught stealing from the Japanese officer's storeroom, or if a man turned on a guard, they received the next grade on the sliding scale of Japanese torture. I called it the Indian rope trick, one favored by Indians in the old cowboy films. The helpless prisoner would be tethered spread-eagled to the ground. They wrapped wet rattan, the same string-like bark used to lash our bamboo huts together, around his ankles and wrists, and tied him to stakes in the ground. As the rattan dried, the ties would slowly gash into the skin, drawing blood and tearing into the sinew and cartilage as it pulled limbs from their sockets. It reduced even the toughest men to agonized screaming, and they would be there all day. I would almost be glad to get out of camp in the mornings just to avoid hearing their cries of unbridled pain. It was a way of torturing all of us. Often, when we returned from a day on the railway, the men would no longer be there. Nobody asked where they had vanished to. I certainly did not want to know. After such a horrific ordeal, at the end of a Japanese bayonet would have been welcomed.